What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 678 of the Smark Moment Smack Talk Hot Tags of the Week and Malachi Black Friday edition of the podcast. I don't know why I felt like that should be funny to say, but it tickles me at the very least. And who is me? Well, I am Tony Manco, joined as always by the birthday boy, Callum Wiggins. Happy birthday, man.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm sharing this with Black Friday, one day after Thanksgiving. Now it's the best holiday of the year. It's my birthday. So.
Yeah, that means more. That means that if you want any kind of deals on Callum, today's the best day to buy.
You're trying to offer me out?
I mean, it depends. How much money are the people offering you? You might end up taking the deal.
Yeah. To be fair, it does depend. Yeah, but before anyone asks, no, I will not tell you how old I am. Suffice to say, I was born in the 90s. You can leave it at that. So,
a ripe old age of 53. So we, of course, are doing our usual spiel here. We're going to run down some different topics that we feel like talking about from this past week. There's honestly not all that much going on, which is totally fine. We've got plenty of other things happening in the world of wrestling that have been taking our priority elsewhere. And of course, it's like, the Thanksgiving week and all that stuff too. So going to be a little shorter end, but that's okay. And we are going to talk about, for instance, our relatively short predictions of TNA Turning Point. We're going to get into some TV talk, a couple little other smatterings of things. So as we do that, we always want you to drop in your thoughts in the comment section below, or on the Discord server, or wherever else you're listening to this. If you are listening to us on the YouTube side of things, so make sure you hit the like button, ring that notification bell for tomorrow for the post-show of Survivor Series, immediately following the pay-per-view. Also, make sure you are subscribed. Hit that join button if you want to get access to the special dark casts and the other kind of features that you could see on Patreon. Same thing, just kind of the 50-50 split over there. Redbubble and TeePublic are all on sale for t-shirts and all that stuff for the rest of the year, I'm pretty sure, or at least close to that. I don't know. But thank you to anybody who's been picking up stuff on Mango Tees and stuff. I'm pretty sure that's just completely random people that are searching for things. Like somebody bought a t-shirt of the Get Away From Me that I had put up during the lockdown of the pandemic. So I'm pretty sure that there's not somebody that's listening to this podcast. But hey, thank you for those people anyway. But yeah, I mean, normal kind of setup for there, all that other kind of stuff. Let's just kind of get into this. Let's talk about a quick congratulations. Tony D'Angelo got married over the past few days. I think it was on the 27th or so. So congrats to Tony D. That's always a good thing to be able to report on. Not too much we can actually talk about. I don't know, anything about the relationship. So here's something on the AEW side of things that's not going to be TV related. Matt Camp actually joined an AEW video. It was inside the Continental Classic. It was a breakdown that they put up on their YouTube channel. We'll talk about the Continental Classic and the new standings and everything when we talk about the TV stuff. But I was really glad to see that because Matt Camp was somebody that I thought was really like a beneficial member of the broadcasting team in WWE. And to see him get released earlier this year was very like, well, why would you get rid of him? He's like one of the best guys you've got. And for all these months in the meantime, I was surprised that he didn't get picked up by AEW. So in whatever capacity this is, if it was just like a test run, or if this is the start of him being able to actually work there, I think that that's a good sign at the very least. I'm a big fan of Matt Camp.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really add too much to it. I don't think I could really pick Matt Camp out of the lineup, so I wouldn't. I'm sure he's good based on stuff I've heard, but yeah, I didn't watch the thing, so the countdown show, so I don't know how well he did on that, and yeah, so I never really watched the bump pretty much at all, so it's not really something that I can judge of AEW, or even if he is signed with AEW, doesn't really hold too much water to me because I've already kind of like the main kind of AEW, I guess supplemental broadcasting teams outside the commentary. So that Renee Paquette, RJ City, Jeff Jarrett usually, I don't think they do a good enough job. I don't think you really need to be replacing any of them with a guy like Matt Camp.
Well, we'll see. As far as I'm aware, he hasn't said anything about like being officially signed to the broadcasting team or something. So it might have just been a one shot or something, but I like him. So I hope he sticks around. And as far as somebody sticking around in AEW, somebody who's being forced to stick around in AEW is Ricky Starks. And we've talked about this for quite a while now. It feels like it's going on like its second year or something at this point. But he has been just sitting at home, and he's done some podcasts, and he's talked about this a little bit, but he's been keeping everything pretty vague. And I think it was Van Vliet that he was on, where he was talking about that he was recently pulled from GCW, and this whole like sitting at home type thing, not sitting well with him. And he just kept like drinking his drink, where, you know, kind of sip the tea every time that something would come up. Very much saying without saying, I want to leave this company and they're forcing me to wait out my contract. And Matt Hardy recently just talked about how he thinks that that's because of Ethan Page, because of the quick turnaround of success from doing absolutely nothing really of importance in AEW and then becoming the NXT champion relatively soon after he joined that. So, you know, the pettiness kind of thing, sometimes you can argue for it. Sometimes you could say it's just business and it's not being petty. Sometimes it seems like it's, come on, give us a break. The GCW thing, being pulled from there, all of this kind of combines to me as just being like, all right, Tony Khan just is like, I'm going to hold Ricky Starks as like a leverage thing for people. Not the biggest fan of it.
I mean, overall, I'm not a big fan of it either, but the GW thing is slightly more nuanced than some people are pulling out. So, essentially, the main thing, according to Fightful Select's reports on this, were that the GCW pull was to do with the fact of a recent interview that Effie gave, one of, obviously, a GCW mainstay, gave about basically just making jokes at the expense of Tony Khan and Tony Khan's father, and talking about obviously their because GCW are going to be running the Hammerstein Ballroom on January the 19th, and AEW are also going to be hosting the Hammerstein Ballroom for a couple of a live Collision show and then a taping of AEW Dynamite in around about the Christmas time. I think that's their Christmas show is going to be at the Hammerstein Ballroom.
And Ring of Honor, it's going to be Hammerstein. Yeah,
exactly. So, and then Effie was just making a load of comments about how, like, them being in there and saying, like, it's not right that they're going to be in GCW, and making references to, like, I think the joke he made was something along the lines that Tony Khan's father pays, like, Tony money to keep him away from him or something, something to that effect. I can't remember the exact sense, but either way, it was some sort of like offhanded, jokey comments that he gave on some podcast that obviously Tony Khan took exception to, because the report specifically said from Fightful that Ricky Starks is able to take bookings outside of AEW still, but he just can't work GCW. So clearly they're just, I think it's just one of those instances where somebody from GCW opening their mouth has burnt a bridge, which is going to prevent them from getting a lot of other AEW talent potentially. As I say, I don't think this is just, it's Ricky Starks and we're just fucking him around until he leaves us. It's more of a case of, yeah, they said something that I don't like, and so GCW don't get any other AEW guys anymore.
Yeah, I mean, if it would have been somebody else in Ricky Starks' spot, it probably would have been pulled. And it just happens to be, it's also Ricky Starks, the guy that you are letting work elsewhere because you don't want to do anything with him on TV, but you also don't want to let him go to WWE out of spite. So it's like it all kind of funneled into the same spot.
It's like someone on social media put right, which is in any context, like Tony Khan is well within his rights to refuse a contracted wrestler to go and do another person's shows, but he's doing it with the wrong person at the wrong time.
Right. Yeah.
Because essentially it's the guy that everyone is kind of referencing and talking about when it comes to one of these people that's being tied to their contract seemingly against their will. And by the reports that go out as well, it seems that Ricky Starks' contract expires sometime between the spring and summer of 2025. So I presume at that point, then he'll be free, and when we'll almost certainly see him show up in NXT or WWE. I don't really hold too much credence with the Matt Hardy thing, because it's just a case of, because realistically, I don't know what people look about like the Ethan Page thing, but realistically, Ethan Page didn't do much of anything with the NXT title. And also, and also it's just a case of like a lot of the wrestlers nowadays don't. It's not like just handing them a title. It's like saying, "Oh, you're super valued," or "That's the most important thing." It's like consistent TV time, and obviously Ethan Page is getting that with NXT. So I'm not saying Ethan Page is definitely in a better position now than he was in like towards the end of his run in AEW, where he was confined to Ring of Honor for the most of the time. But I don't think that like how Ethan Page is being treated in NXT is going to have any bearing on Ricky Starks leaving or staying. It's primarily due to the fact that he seemingly isn't having a good experience in AEW or hasn't had a good experience in AEW, and he was going to go to WWE one way or the other. Like we were saying that Ricky Starks was going to probably go to WWE way before Ethan Page even showed up in NXT.
Right.
So yeah, I don't really buy into that. I think that's just Matt Hardy saying things because that's kind of just half of what Matt Hardy does. He basically goes to TNA as half his work, and then talking shit about AEW is the other half of his work. Which essentially every ex WWE guy went to AEW for a little while. That's basically they're no longer signed to the company. That's kind of just their bread and butter work in between of their actual wrestling.
I mean, I could see this being a case where like it's not the main element, but it's a factor. Like, well,
you obviously want to know that if you're going over from AEW to WWE or vice versa, that you're not going to be treated like a second-rate citizen. In the way that Vince McMahon used to in the past, where it's like, oh, you get Dusty Rhodes, like a top champion from the NWA and a prominent feature in WCW. And when he comes over, you're getting dressed up in polka dots and dancing with a woman called Sapphire.
Right.
Like that is so obviously you don't want that to happen. I think they've already demonstrated. I mean, Cody's the biggest demonstration of that, and Jade Cargill is a demonstration of that as well. It's like they are utilizing the star power that they've gathered from AEW and pushing it in a productive way. So I don't think, Ethan Page is another example of that. So I'm not saying there's no factor whatsoever, but it's a case of there's plenty of signs to suggest that this current regime does not hold it against you if you started your career or you became more prominent in AEW than you did in WWE. They're going to utilize that and leverage that to their benefit.
Yeah, I mean, like, I could see it's probably a well-known quote-unquote secret of like the opportunity that you get to leave AEW. We're going to put you, Ricky Starks, in NXT, and we'll probably end up giving you the NXT championship. And then it's just a matter of waiting. And then somebody like a Tony Khan is probably like, well, I don't like that you popped up backstage there. I don't really want to use you, but I don't want to let them just get their next NXT champion. So I might as well just hold your contract because we're not on great terms. And you can't go there because I don't want them to get anything out of it. And I don't want to just let them skip to the end of the race. And I mean, a certain level, it's like, yeah, he does have every right to do that. It's the same as like what we were talking about with the trademark stuff with Edge. It's like, yeah, it's a company, it's a business. They could do that. But then you start getting into the whole like, man, you're losing out more and more of that kind of energy that what you started out with. Like, we don't do that kind of stuff here. And then it's like, well, remember when you were supposed to give all them health insurance? And remember when there was supposed to be only the 4 pay-per-views a year instead of the 12 that WWE does? And now you're at 11. And 11 if you don't count like the special TV episodes that are basically kind of mini pay-per-views. So then you're like, remember when? And it's like, man, that sucks. Like for a company that says the whole restore the feeling, like I think you kind of actually are forgetting a lot of how this started. I'd like to see them just let them go and just be like, all right, just move on, you know?
Yeah, I'm not pretending this isn't petty, because it absolutely is. And at the end of the day, like, this is kind of a situation between Tony Khan and his issues with both WWE side of things, and then now with GCW as well. And it's the talent in the middle that suffers as a result of it. So, as I don't think that this is not what I would be doing if I was in Tony Khan's situation. I'd just be cutting my losses and saying, because at the end of the day, the more you do this, the more likely. I mean, there's 2 ways you can go about it. It's either making people forget about Ricky Starks, but Ricky Starks is so prominent in the news cycle that among in the know wrestling fans, they're going to. It's actually building up more of a furore around him and waiting and anticipation for when he does eventually leave and head to WWE. So So yeah, I think that it's something that probably at the time felt like, oh, this is like not just like he's in his rights to do it, but almost like he's justified to do this because of the way that either Stark in his mind Stark's behaving, or how WWE is behaving this whole thing in the same way that he's going to hold Ray Phoenix to his contract, potentially against his will as well. And we haven't heard anything about Miro being released after being requesting his release as well.
That's right. I keep forgetting about Miro.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure. As I say, I think it's just gone to the point where he's just going to keep these people on ice, which we would always complain about when WWE were doing it. So we shouldn't change our tune just because it's AEW instead. So as I say, I think that what he's doing is backfiring on them. And as you say, is in a lot of people's minds, it's starting to erode away some of the goodwill that they generated when they started off. So, that's just, but he's made his bed now, so you might as well just lie in it. It's a case of, there's no point now, just letting, because then it just feels like, you've kind of just been fallen to the, pressure of other people outside of it. So it's kind of like this weird situation. Tony Khan is, by all accounts, and when people talk about him, saying, he's just a nice dude and pretty genuine dude. But it's a case of, then other people saying we need to show more leadership and strength. And so if this is an instance where he's trying to show that strength of character or resolve, then if he doesn't, then, either way, he's going to get pilloried about it. So he might as well just stick to his guns if that's what he plans on doing.
Sticking straight to Austin and Colton. Let's bounce over to TNA as much as we can. So, of course, we have to preface this with the usual stuff of being
we don't watch it.
We don't watch TNA, so we can't really.
We don't like it
too much about
it. We don't watch it. We don't like it. Rob's not here. He's the only one that does watch it and like it.
He'd be able to fill us in a little bit more. We don't know anything about any of the
storylines.
Right. Yeah. I did read a couple
storylines. We don't know.
I read a couple little reports about stuff, and I saw a couple little clips of things. So I'm more informed than I was a few days ago. But to say that is to be I could tell you slightly why some matches are happening and not much of a reason beyond that. But we're going to break it down anyway. It's TNA Turning Point. It's happening later on tonight. I think it starts we're recording this right now. It's 3:59 p.m. for context of when this gets uploaded. I think the pre-show starts at 6:30. So that's going to be kind of a quick turnaround. But the lineup that what they've got listed on Wikipedia, we've got one pre-show match. It's a three-way between Savannah Evans, Rosemary, and Xia Brookside. And as far as I have been able to see, they signed Xia Li. I forget what name she's going under now. It's 3-name structure. And I guess she got attacked by Savannah Evans. And then the report that I had read was basically these three are fighting each other. Who's going to win? And that was it. Didn't give any context of why this is happening or anything. So I'm going to assume that Savannah Evans gets attacked by Xia Li, whatever her new ring name is. And then that opens up room for Rosemary or Xia Brookside to win. But go in any direction if you have the slightest bit of idea of what's going on here, because it's more than what I know.
No, as I say, I don't know what the kind of rationale behind this freeway match is. So
I don't even know who Savannah Evans is.
So she was, as from what I remember, and it's probably changed since then, but I remember her being the kind of heater and bodyguard of what's her name? She's former Tasha Steelz, that's it. One of the former Knockouts champions, and since then she's been part of Giselle Shaw's crew. But obviously Giselle Shaw no longer works for TNA, I believe. So yeah, I think right now she's just kind of in the wilderness, just doing her own stuff now. So yeah, freeway match. I'd just say Rosemary wins, maybe.
Yeah. Moose is defending the X Division title against Laredo Kid. Sure. Moose wins.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are probably pretty surprised about him just being the X Division champion now. But as we know, Mike Bailey's contract is expiring soon, so they've chosen to get a title off of him, and they've put it on Moose, which is an odd one. But as Rob would say, the X Division's about it's not about weight limits, it's about no limits. So Moose will retain. So
there is a singles match between Santana and Frankie Kazarian, which the preview that I had seen, this was as basic as it could get. Kazarian and Santana were in the ring. Santana's like in the babyface position. Kazarian says, I am not working the pay-per-view. And Santana's like, how about a match? That was the whole setup that I saw. So I'm like, all right, well then I guess if Kazarian's the heel and if he's got this call your shot gauntlet thing and he's looking at the world title match, I'm going to say Santana wins and then Kazarian threatens to potentially cash in later on in the night.
Yeah. So the way that Wikipedia has it described is, so on the July 4th Impact, Frankie Kazarian defeated Mike Santana as part of a Road to Slammiversary series to qualify for the TNA World Championship match at Slammiversary, which I presume would have been a King of the Mountain match. I can't remember off the top of my head, or some kind of big like multi-man match. And then several months later, on November 21st, this hot feud that like had one match on July 4th, and then all the way at November 21st, like 4 months later, Santana cut a promo in the ring about his goals of winning the world title, and then he was confronted by Kazarian, and he won the Call the Shot gauntlet Bound for Glory, and the two would argue about who's going to be the next champion, and then Santana challenged Kazarian to a match. Like, okay, great.
Yeah.
This sounds incredibly boring. Like, this is what, a 2024 Frankie Kazarian against Mike Santana. This doesn't really scream like must-see viewing for me. So I'll go with Santana winning because Frankie Kazarian has a locked-in world title shot at any point. So he can probably just do some jobs in the meantime, treat it in the same way that basically any holder of the Money in the Bank briefcase is. As soon as you hold that hold onto that briefcase, then you're just at liberty to lose every match that you can until you win the world title. So,
yeah, I mean, that's, if somebody has any kind of other ideas about like, no, they were clearly building up to something else. It's another one of those things where it's completely unknown to me. And I would apply the same thing when it comes to the Josh Alexander and Steve Maclin no DQ match. The only thing I can add to that is we do know that Josh Alexander plans on leaving. And I would assume that if he won that last thing that I was assuming he was going to lose, that now would be the perfect time for him to lose to another guy. And then I think that Alexander's contract is over either at the beginning of the year or it's like in February. So it's like you got to kind of work your way out of there unless you are working under the assumption of, now let's keep him looking strong in case he ever wants to come back or resign or something. I would go towards Steve Maclin wins. If it's no DQ, somebody either starts a new feud with Alexander and they attack him, and that's how Maclin wins. I believe Macklin's group is like banned from ringside or something.
It's actually Alexander's group that's banned from ringside.
Alexander's? Oh, okay. So yeah. Either way, I'm going to go Maclin.
Alexander's the heel, yeah. Yeah, I'll probably go Maclin. They had Alexander beat him at Bound for Glory, so I assume this will just be a means to get the like Maclin to get his win back, and then they have a rubber match at the last pay-per-view of the year.
And we got a 6-man tag, the Hardys and Ace Austin against the Rascals and Kushida. You might as well go with the Rascals and Kushida, so that way you can set up the Rascals get the next title shot against the Hardys.
Well, so it's been revealed that so Trey Miguel can't travel to Turning Point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's been like some travel complications involving him trying to get there, so it means that right now the match is actually now going to be the Hardy Boys and Ace Austin versus Zachary Wentz, Kushida, and someone to be announced. So Wesley. No idea who that replaces. Well, I don't know who the place will be, because where is Turning Point take place? Like in North Carolina. So I imagine it can't be someone that they, because it's just been announced like a few hours ago that this happened. So I imagine they couldn't just pull someone at the last minute, like just immediately come from, I don't know, Florida or wherever to come up to North Carolina at like super short notice. So I imagine it'll just be someone else from the existing TNA roster that's probably on like standby, just in case certain people couldn't make it or there was some kind of injury or issue. So yeah, as I say, I don't know who that would necessarily be. And if it's Kushida, then you could potentially go with Kevin Knight if he's available, because that's his tag team partner over in New Japan. So if he's around, but just depends on what his availability is. But yeah, it probably means that the Hardys and Ace Austin win, unless they want to, use this TBA to do something a little bit more shocking and have the other team win. But I imagine the Hardys and Ace Austin will win anyway.
I mean, the TBA could be somebody that's like a backstage producer that they can just be like, can you step in the ring real quick and kind of do that? Or if it's somebody that's in the North Carolina area that could just drive, maybe, I don't know, who's like on retainer. Flip a coin for that, though. Flip a coin for this, too. The 6-way Thanksgiving Turkey Bowl match. Now, apparently this is a thing. I didn't know this, but it's Joe Hendry.
This is a TNA tradition.
Yeah, I did not have any idea that this was like you lose and you have to put a turkey suit on, and that's supposed to be so humiliating, even though it looks like it's like, who gives a shit? But it's Joe Hendry, Eric Young, Hammerstone, Brian Myers, PCO, and John Schuyler. And I could see, if this is the gimmick that they do all the time, I could see anybody losing this and winning this, because if they try to go like, oh, isn't it funny if Hammerstone is wearing a turkey costume? I don't know. I guess if that you find that funny, I could see like Brian Myers being a guy that flips out about it. I could see PCO being, well, isn't it funny if he's wearing it? Eric Young is kind of more on that, like he could gobble around and do something stupid. Or do you want to put it on Joe Hendry to make it seem like it's a quote unquote viral moment and he could sing a song about it? But I'm going to say John Schuyler loses and that Joe Hendry pins him, I guess. I don't know. Actually, no, I'm going to say Brian Myers loses and Joe Hendry pins him.
Yeah, I'd assume that Brian Myers is probably going to lose. That kind of seems to be his lot in life, even though he's like been a multiple time like tag champion in TNA in this current run. But I imagine that he seems to be the right fit to wear the turkey suit. And yeah, it'd be weird to go from Joe Hendry challenging for the world title at the last pay-per-view. Well, it's weird enough to him just being in this match after being in the world championship match at the last pay-per-view, but to go from that, him to lose it straight away would seem like wrong. So I imagine he'll get the victory in some fashion, and then I'd argue that it's probably Brian Myers or John Schuyler, or they might just put it on PCO because like it just feels weird to just have the monster in a turkey suit. But this is the 10th, well, I say annual, because they've had breaks in between it, but this is the 10th ever Turkey Bowl match in TNA history.
Why was this a thing once, let alone for 10 years?
Yeah, so it started in 2007. So there were 3 qualification matches to get into the Turkey Bowl. And as far as I can tell, there was no benefit to being in the Turkey Bowl match. Like if you won, you didn't get a title shot or anything like that. Just like if you won, and then if you lost the final match, then you got to wear the turkey suit.
Yeah, that sounds so stupid.
So it was Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, and Chris Sabin in the first ever Turkey Bowl match. So 3 guys that are still working today. And Samoa Joe pinned AJ Styles, and so he had to. So AJ Styles was the first ever person to wear the turkey suit.
I wonder if this just started out as a rib on AJ or something.
Yeah. It was probably a rib on someone. I imagine that what's his face, Vince Russo is probably doing some creative work at this point in time. so the person who loses this match will join the following as wearers of the turkey suit: AJ Styles, Alex Shelley, Robbie E. Well, actually, technically Robbie T. Robbie E lost the match, but then Robbie T had to put it on instead. Jesse Goddard. What's this? Dewey Barnes and North Furnham. Okay.
So North Furnham is Peter Avalon.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember these were like two like jobbers that they would roll out every now and again. Grado. It's this one. God, it's because it's so stupid because not even like it's not even like a case of like just reading who lost the match. It's also just like reading bullshit that happens after it as well. Like, so it was
the Grado was the last one.
Chris Adonis, so Chris Masters, and then you had who's this one?
Eli Drake.
Glenn. Oh. No, that was supposed to be Eli Drake. He got pied instead, but they did put it on Chris Adonis instead. You have Glenn Gilberti, so Disco Inferno, put it on at one point, and then the last year's one was Jay Vidal. In like it was some kind of like 8-man tag match where one of the losers had to put on the turkey suit, or Vidal because he got pinned had to put on the turkey suit. So, yeah, stupid match with stupid stipulation.
Great kind of selling point, right? So, what else was there? There was the Masha Slamovich against Jordan Grace in a 2 out of 3 falls match for the TNA Knockouts championship. Obviously, Jordan Grace isn't going to win that back. I mean, that's like, what was the whole point of taking the title off of her? And we know she's going to, like, she's absolutely 100% leaving and going to WWE. If anything else were to happen, I would be incredibly shocked. So she gets one of these 3 falls and Slamovich gets the other 2 and retains.
Yeah, I can only presume that's the case. The only other thing I could potentially see happening is like they get a fall each, and then the final one ending some kind of draw or smalls finish, and have another rematch at the end of the year, and that's like the final match that Grace has before she returns back. Well, I say returns. She might as well be returning at this rate, considering how often she's shown up in the last year. But she goes WWE officially as part of the Royal Rumble, and then they move on in that direction. But yeah, obviously, I don't think Slamovich is losing the title here, but they might do something else to try and protect Grace, because I imagine WWE doesn't want her taking too many losses going into her run there. But maybe they don't care about that, because at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. No one's really watching this anyway, so.
And then there's the Nick Nemeth and Eddie Edwards TNA World Title match, which I fully assume Nick Nemeth is just retaining.
Yeah, this feels like really boring as well. Like, I mean, it's a case of, I'm sure it'll be a fine match because these two are fine wrestlers, but like Eddie Edwards, really? That feels like such an odd choice to be the champion challenger. I would have thought that there'd be other people. I mean, Moose is the big person in that group, the system anyway, but presumably because he's holding the X Division title, they can't do it now, so they've just gone with one of the former tag champions to face him instead. So that just feels, yeah, Eddie Edwards is a former TNA world champion, so you can kind of put that lineage on it, but yeah, it just feels like he's a step below that now. So yeah, I'd be very surprised if Nick Nemeth doesn't retain the title.
Now, for that matter, I also assume that Frankie Kazarian is not cashing in, winning the title, and walking away with the title.
I'd be surprised right now. It just feels like that seems like an odd time to do it. I would have thought they'd wait for a bigger show or a bigger moment to do it.
I mean, that's at least currently what they have advertised for Turning Point from the perspective of 2 people who don't watch the show. So tonight I will be trying to do some live coverage of that in some capacity for EWN. So yeah, I'll have that on somewhat in the background. I don't know if I'll be watching it, or if I'll just be kind of like, oh, okay, so that match ended. Let me go type out who wins or something. But if I do end up watching it, I'll be talking about what happened on there on the next Hot Tags. Bouncing back around to the TV talk, I'm rounding things out already. The bulk of the stuff from Monday Night Raw that were worth actually talking about was stuff that was heading into Survivor Series. So we already talked about that with the Survivor Series breakdown. The rest of it was all stuff that we don't really need to get into. Like the New Day teased again that they're going to split next week. We'll talk about that next week. American Made had a match, et cetera, et cetera. But they did announce one thing, and they announced this very strangely. I do not understand why they did it this way. So they recorded before Raw 2 matches for main event, which is par for the course, a match for Speed, if I remember correctly. And then they had a segment, and this is before Raw started, where Adam Pearce unveiled the Women's Intercontinental Championship. And then during the show, they said, oh, by the way, this happened before Raw, and showed the clip of that. What's weird to me about that is, why didn't you just plan Raw out where during the segment on Raw that you would air him saying that? He just says it on Raw. Why did you need to record that a little bit in advance? That's odd. They could have just, during the commercial break, Adam Pearce comes out. When they come back from the commercial break, he goes, ladies and gentlemen, I want to announce this is the Women's Intercontinental Championship. He says the exact same couple of lines that he said. And then they cut away and they go to Joe and Barrett. And they're like, wow, same old kind of stuff that they said after that. And then they move on to the next segment. I don't understand why they did it this way.
Yeah, it seems like a bit of a weird production move for that one. So, yeah, I can't really find any explanation or rationale behind why they would necessarily do it. But I guess, that's just, a silly thing that they decided to do. And then it probably should just go with the fact that, oh, yeah, we've now got this mid-card title for the women for the Raw side of things, which we were expecting, and for some reason decided to announce 2 to 3 weeks after they announced the SmackDown one.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
Is that sort of story that they want to tell about this? Is that Adam Pearce is copying Nick Aldis? He's like, oh fuck, they've got this. Oh shit, okay, Women's Intercontinental title. Got one. We'll have to order one.
We totally had this planned. We just have to wait a little bit because the belt's not here.
Yeah, can we get the express delivery? Oh, I'm not paying that much. I guess I have to wait a couple of weeks then for it to turn up.
It's really odd. They would have been so much better off if they would have just. I mean, what would have made the most sense to me is right after Crown Jewel, when they go, okay, champion versus champion. We already settled these championships. I could understand them not wanting to introduce new titles prior to that, but then afterward, on the Raw and SmackDown afterward, they could have been like. And by the way, as far as new championships are concerned, we've got these 2 new titles, and we're going to have them talk about that on those 2 shows. And they're just back-to-back shows. They just run down the break. I don't know why they did it this way, but it is going to be the same sort of thing, although the championship is going to be settled in a slightly different way. They did say, of course, that this is the Raw side of it. So I think a tournament is going to start on this coming Monday, but they didn't announce anybody yet or who and what the brackets are and all that stuff. So at least with our breakdown, if we're assuming that they're going to do this the same way that they did the SmackDown one, SmackDown only used women that are on SmackDown, save for what happens tonight. Spoiler alert if everybody doesn't want to know what happens tonight. Since Jade Cargill got taken out, we know she gets replaced with Lash Legend. And Lash doesn't even win that anyway. It ends up being Michin. So we can assume it's probably going to be the same case for Monday Night Raw, that they're going to use only the women that are on there. There are a handful of women that are on Raw that are injured that we, as far as I'm aware, shouldn't count as being on, waiting in the wings. So there's currently 22 women that are on Raw. One of them is Liv Morgan. You could take her out of the mix. She's not going to be in this. You could certainly take out Rhea Ripley. They're not going to give her the Women's Intercontinental title. She's women the regular one. And then if you assume that Asuka is still MIA from her injury, and Kiana James, as far as I'm aware, she's not around. Nikki Cross doesn't really wrestle. She just does the stuff for the Wyatts. Scarlett doesn't wrestle. Take her out. That already makes us down to 16. And if they do the triple threat scenario that they did with the SmackDown side, that's 12 out of the 16. And then you just kind of pick which ones you really wanted part of that. You got Alba Fire, Isla Dawn, Dakota Kai, Ivy Nile, Io Sky, Kairi Sane, Katana Chance, Kaden Carter, Lyra Valkyria, Maxine Dupree, Natalia, Raquel Rodriguez, Shayna, Sonya, Zoe, and Zelina Vega. I think that there are a couple different people that they could go with, and it wouldn't shock me. The only things that would really surprise me are if they went with Casey, Maxine, maybe Alba or Isla. And I think everybody else, it wouldn't be the craziest thing for me. You know, if they give it to Natty, okay, well, they give it to her because they know they're not going to give her the world title soon. If they give it to Raquel, that's because they never wanted to do that. They only wanted to give her tag titles. Zelina, yeah, give her the Intercontinental title. She worked fine with that. Lyra, sure. Io, I think I'd probably wait on Io. I'd probably keep her more in like the main event picture, but you know, Dakota Kai could win it. Kairi can win it. It really doesn't matter. Anybody can win this. I'd be relatively okay with it. Anybody stand out to you?
I guess it depends what they want to do with it, because I thought that with the United States one, again, similar with the Intercontinental one, in order to establish it as a prize immediately and to give it a prominent person holding it, you probably should go with someone who's a former world champion, or at least someone who can be positioned in the world title scene. So that's why I think that the United States one should be Bayley to start with, because she has been in that position for a long time, and so she can help set up whoever the first person to beat her, make it feel a bit more impressive when she drops that title. So the one that would immediately spring to mind for the Raw side of things would be Io. But as I say, she is currently owed at least a World Championship match, so they'd have to see how they want to play that out. It'd be quite interesting if they allow Bianca Belair into this one as well, because as technically the women's tag team champion, she can go between both brands. So they might give her an opportunity to go into this one. I think it's unlikely, and she wouldn't win it anyway, but it might be just to fill another slot, so you'd have to put someone else in there. But yeah, I think a member of Damage Control would make a lot of sense. Shayna would be another one who's fairly prominent that you could give that title to. Natty, of course, but to have a bit of like an aversion to Natty holding it, because it just makes it feel like that's pretty boring choice. So yeah, if it's up to me, I probably would go, if the world title match wasn't withstanding, I would go with Io immediately as the first one, but considering the fact that she has got a world title opportunity, I'd probably go with Shayna.
Yeah, Shayna's more than a capable person to do that we've seen her with her title reigns before in singles capacities, and as long as they push her, that's all that really matters. So yeah, when they talk about what the actual layout is and all, then we'll break it down a little bit more of like who we think is going to be in the finals and all that. But something to keep an eye on. Women's Intercontinental title, we have been saying for a while, if they're going to do the United States one, they might as well do the Intercontinental to balance it out. That all makes sense. And that was like it when it came to Monday Night Raw. On the NXT side of things, we got some more people filling in for NXT Deadline. Ethan Page defeated Axiom for the Iron Survivor spot. Julia beat Kelani Jordan, and there's also going to be, and this the way they did this too. This was a messy episode of NXT, very messy. Like they started out with Ridge Holland just being like, "Hey, remember how I beat Andre Chase last week? Well, I did," and then they moved to a match, and Lola had a thing with Stephanie Vaquer backstage where she was like, "I interfered in your match to cost Jada Parker," and Vaquer's like, "Neat," and walks away. And then Ren Sinclair, for some reason, tells Lola Vice that was stupid, which leads to a match between those two. And then Lola Vice challenges Jada Parker to an NXT Underground match, which they then don't announce. It was like, okay, well, that's either going to be at NXT Deadline or it's going to be at next week's NXT. And instead, they just announced Well, here's the lineup for both of those, and neither of them include Lola Vice versus Jade Parker, so that's a little odd. They had, after the Ethan Page and Axiom match, a bunch of people come out and they do their whole thing and they brawl and everybody continues to have this. And Wesley very casually mentions, well, I'm going to get that title shot for NXT New Year's Evil. So at that point, I'm like, all right, well, then that's confirmation that New Year's Evil is coming back. But then they never said when it's coming back. And they never said that that means both the men's and the women's Iron Survivor Challenge winners are going to have that. So that was like, let's just drop this and not follow through with it. They had this backstage thing with Nikita Lyons and Ashanti, the Adonis, where, and this is another, like, we don't really have anything to push the story forward, so can we kind of just repeat what we did last week type of writing, where they were flirting. Carmen Petrovic comes over and it's like, oh, so you did text her. Well, then I'm just as mad as I was last week. Well, that was really lame. Adriana Rizzo and Tony D had a backstage segment where Rizzo was asking where Luca, Crucifino, and Stax were, and how's your knee or your leg or whatever, to Tony D, who's like, everything's fine. Kind of implying that there's going to be something that happens during the title match with Shawn Spears, that it's like, oh, they don't have any backup, his leg is messed up, oh, he'll probably lose the title to Shawn Spears. And he just retains. And then they all get, he gets beaten up by the new guy, Nico Vance, who stares at Rizzo, which is like, okay, so are we supposed to say that there's like a Rizzo and Vance backstory here, or what's going on there? But that was kind of sloppy. Andre Chase was shown packing up his stuff, and then somebody off camera is like, hey, Mr. Chase. And then it just ends. So that was odd. And then they do this thing, and if you didn't see this, you got to check it out. They had a backstage thing where Ava was talking about how everybody keeps brawling with each other for the tag team titles, and there's going to be last chance matches next week on NXT for all the people that lost their qualifying matches, that they're going to get one more chance to get into the Iron Survivor Challenge matches. Kind of did what they did last year, I'm pretty sure, so makes sense. And because they need to like juggle a bunch of storylines all at the same time, they're like, okay, well, the tag teams are all beating each other up constantly, and they're going to have a battle royal next week to determine who fights Axiom and Nathan Fraser. Now, Nathan Fraser's already in the Iron Survivor match at Deadline, and Axiom lost his match, but he's going to get the chance in the last chance thing. So that last chance thing is going to be Lexis King, Axiom, Cedric Alexander, and I'm blanking on who the other person is now, for the men's side of that. And what was it?
I was going to say, so I'm just trying to remember. So there's Axiom. So yeah, Axiom, Cedric Alexander. There was what's the
Eddie
guy's name?
Thorpe,
The DJ guy. Eddie Thorpe. Yeah,
that's actually the big talking point, because Eddie Thorpe then is like, hey, what the hell? I'm the only one who had any kind of interference, and why do I have to be in a last chance thing and everybody else gets another opportunity? And then this, the way that they're doing this whole story with Ava is her just being like, well, shut up, Eddie. I don't want to talk to you for absolutely no reason. And Eddie Thorpe just being whiny. And both of them come across as like awful instead of it being, the way that you're supposed to take it. But then all the tag team people start fighting again after Fraser and Axiom are doing the whole, oh, are we going to have to do double duty? Well, I'm going to have to do double duty, but you lost. Oh, but I get a chance to lose. And then we're going to have to fight each other if we're in the match. So the tag team champions continue to hate each other. They're going to do potentially double duty, or one of them is. And then that's going to depend on, if anything else changes along those lines. I would like it to be a scenario where Axiom doesn't get in the Iron Survivor Challenge match, and that the men's Iron Survivor Challenge goes before the tag team title match. So Fraser's already beaten up, and then they lose the tag titles, and Axiom can be like, you see, why did you go for the singles thing? Now you cost us that, and then they can feud afterward. I'd rather that be the case. But we don't even know who's going to win the tag title opportunity already. But they all start fighting again. And this was so stupid and so poorly done. Bronco Nima pushes Mark Coffey, who hits a door, and the door hits Ava. And because Eddie Thorpe was talking to Ava and went to like grab her to make sure that she didn't like walk away from him or something, she's like, don't touch me or whatever. It gets assumed that Eddie Thorpe hit her. And then Shawn Michaels is all mad at Eddie Thorpe. Like, what the hell did you do? Like, I stood there while Bronco Nima punched Mark Coffey. That's what I did. This was just a mess. It was so cheesy and so stupid. I absolutely hated it. I thought it was really hokey. And then they also had a little segment backstage a little bit later where No Quarter Catch Crew was all like, oh man, we're all beaten up. And Charlie Dempsey's just like sipping coffee. And he's like, oh, by the way, Ren, like you've got this last chance qualifier thing next week. And that's between some other thing to talk about. But that's that whole thing. Did you see the bad thing with Eddie Thorpe and Ava?
I don't watch anything from NXT, so I don't know. I would assume that I picked out something that was really bad from NXT to watch.
I thought you might have seen people talking about how ridiculous it was, and you might have seen the clip.
No, because let's put it this way: I'm rarely on Twitter these days. I'm on Blue Sky, and Blue Sky's all about AEW. It's not like I fundamentally have not seen anyone mention NXT once in any time I've been on Blue Sky.
I recommend you check it out. It's really bad. So next week's gonna.
Great. Yeah, I'll definitely.
No, I mean, because it's funny to laugh at.
Yeah, well, the good stuff that like people talk about in NXT, I think is bad. So like, I'm sure that like the bad thing I'm going to find is like one of the worst things I've ever seen. So
it's really poorly done. It's very badly acted and all. Then they also had some other things going on. Trick had like a promo segment that really wasn't all that great with Rich Holland. For some reason, they threw out a little dig at Ava, being like, she's going to be okay. We all know who her bloodline is. So I don't know if it's going to... Rob's theory is that this is going to be a scenario where they're going to bring in Hikuleo and or Lance Anoa'i, and they're going to be like security detail for Ava, and that's going to be that. I'm like, I don't know. I don't put a whole lot of faith in that at this point, but could be. But Trick was talking about all these great people that have been through, like Braun Breaker and Ilya Dragunov, and he's like, and even Carmelo Hayes. So I guess maybe we're on like that slow burn to them becoming a tag team again, maybe. And they're interrupted by Eric Bischoff, of all people, who pops up on the Titantron in a pre-recorded thing that they're acting as live. And he's like, I want to be on NXT next week to make you both kind of flip out. And I want to see what makes you tick, and you're going to like really hate each other. And then randomly after that, it's like, oh, and by the way, X-Pac is also going to be there for some reason. Because he's just like, wow, I'm going to be there. I don't know what the hell they're planning on doing this. I'm assuming that they're bringing these names in just to try to bump up a rating a little bit. But at the same time, Eric Bischoff popping up between Trick Williams and Ridge Holland to do that, I don't see the connection. And I'm hoping that X-Pac does something cool, but they didn't even bother to announce what he's potentially going to be involved in. I throw my hands about it right now, at least, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that all seems pretty lame in general. like let's say X-Pac, you know, he's a cool guy, but, you know, there's not really much that he can do too much at this point. So I don't imagine he's going to get, like, his hands on anyone or do something that's super involved or crazy. And, you know, the Eric Bischoff thing, everyone knows should know my thoughts on Eric Bischoff and the fact that, like, he's just a grifter that, you know, is now being paid by WWE. So really, anything that he ever says about AEW just shouldn't even hold any water whatsoever. Because let's say, there's nothing wrong with like doing fair criticism towards AEW, but the fact of the matter is he's getting paid by their rivals, and so like you have to take every single bit of criticism that he levies towards them with a grain of salt now. So
and the other. You know, the other talking point was Fallon Henley retained her NXT Women's North American Championship over Tatum Paxley, who had been playing with some dolls backstage as per normal. And this all led to Gigi Dolan returning and helping Paxley fight them off. So it's good to see Gigi Dolan back. I'm kind of okay with the Paxley and Dolan tag team. They look like they could work well together. And I don't know if Dolan's going to be the person that beats Fallon Henley for that women's North American title, but it's a possibility. And, something to keep an eye on. But that was the way that episode ended. And, we're going to get the final go-home show leading into NXT Deadline next week with that whole Last Chance thing and the Battle Royal and Eric Bischoff and X-Pac and fallout from all these other things. So my prediction, at least for right now, is that the men's Iron Survivor Challenge, at this point, it's looking like it probably is just going to be Axiom. I don't think Cedric Alexander, Eddie Thorpe, or Lexis King makes more sense, even though I'd rather it be somebody else and do the whole Axiom story like that. Between Cora, Jada Parker, Kelani Jordan, and Ren Sinclair, I am assuming Kelani Jordan probably wins that. And I'd be very shocked if it's like Sinclair. I'm assuming Lola White's probably screws over Jada Parker, and then, it could be Cora Jade, but I think it'll be Kelani. And the tag titles thing, I have no idea who's getting that title shot. So let's go, I guess, maybe OTM, since they did do that prominent enough thing this week. So, that was the NXT stuff. And then that brings us into Dynamite and Collision and everything that's going on. So
before we go ahead with that side of things, I would ideally refrain from doing the Collision spoilers, because I don't want to hear the Collision spoilers. I'm not fucked to the thing, because I want to follow Continental Classic as if it's, happening in real time. So I do not want to hear who won the Continental Classic matches. If there's anything else about Collision you want to share about from the results, that's fine, but I do not want to hear who won the Continental Classic matches.
Well, if you do want to hear that, you can find them. It's very easy to find them out. We won't talk about it then if that's the case. But we do have some updates of the standings as far as Dynamite. And we also had Jericho retain the ROH World title over Tomohiro Ishii. Jamie Hayter beat Queen Amanada to advance further to get that spot at Wrestle Dynasty, which, now that we know the group of people that is in there, Jamie Hayter seems like a solid pick that could be representing AEW. Could be Willow. You can see that too.
It'll definitely be Willow. Because the thing that happened after the match is that Jamie Hayter got, the lights went out for the Julia Hart thing, so Julia Hart's going to cost Jamie Hayter the match, and that's going to be the feud coming off the back of that.
Probably. And both would be great to represent them, so yeah. Oh yeah,
it'd be a good choice. I wish they were doing something more prominent with Jamie Hayter, but she's going to be there to be the gatekeeper for Julia Hart's return. So hopefully at least that feud is good, but it means that Willow's going to be the choice, and that's kind of the fair choice. She's worked for Ring of Honor a lot of times. She's done CLL stuff. She's done stuff in New Japan, so it's quite fair that she's the one, the biggest, I guess, notoriety, or probably the biggest fan base in Japan out of all the four women. That probably makes sense that she's the one that is representing AEW in that match. But her against Jamie Hayter should at least be a good match, if it isn't super marred by interference by Julia Hart.
There's another thing that was important in the women's division, where Mercedes Moné came out to try to fire Camille, who said, "You can't fire me, I quit." I didn't like the segment at all.
No, it's another celebration thing. It's always a couple of steps forward with Mercedes and then more steps backwards after one of these sort of segments. It's quite interesting that Brian Alvarez, in his kind of review of Dynamite he does a few days afterwards, commented that he has the feeling that this isn't a setting up a match between Mercedes and Camille. And he's of the way that he was talking, it's either a sense of they're just cutting this and they're going to give Camille something else to do, give Camille a break and then her just come back doing something else, or that it might be a case that it's not working between her and AEW.
Oh,
so I was like, that was just the kind of intonation but the way that he was talking, he didn't specifically say that side of things, but he just basically just intimated that he doesn't believe that the way this was going and things that he's heard that this is going to lead to a Mercedes versus Camille match down the road. He may be wrong, but that's what his feeling was off the back of it. And
I'd be totally down for that if that was the case. Like, she's not working out well in AEW, and I do kind of feel like at this point she would have been better off going to NXT.
I mean, I guess, but for me, the reason why she's not working well in AEW is because she's not working well. Like, the matches that she's had have been pretty bad. And
I haven't liked this Mercedes story either. I haven't liked anything about any of this.
Well, no, I know you've not liked Mercedes the second that she walked into AEW, so...
Yeah, it's just not working. Like, I can't... I don't know. I don't like anything about her in AEW at all, and I'm like, crap, like, I really liked Sasha in WWE, but now it's starting to make me kind of, like, regret being as big of a... Like, I'm thinking back to the WWE stuff and going, was it actually really that good?
That's fine. It's the same thing with the CM Punk. She'll go back to WWE and you'll like her again. Like, you hated everything that CM Punk did in AEW, and now he's back in WWE. You like everything that he does. So.
I'm surprised about that too, because I mean, how long was it just like, and I don't know, CM Punk's working well in there, and
certain people just have AEW as well. You just didn't like it. So. He wasn't working well backstage, but everything he actually did on TV was good, pretty much. So.
I mean, I still don't think that his matches in WWE are anything to be like.
The matches aren't great still. Oh, the Hell in a Cell match was great.
That was good. That was the one match out of all the matches he's had since stepping back into the ring. Period. That I'm like, all right, I like that one. Like, yeah, that one stands out more. Dog collar one was fun too in certain ways. So that's probably the best one that I could say for AEW for him. But the feuds in AEW.
I'd always go with the Kingston. Yeah, I'd always go with. Well, to be fair, he's only had one real feud in WWE, so we can't really judge him too much. And the Drew McIntyre feud, for the most part, well, it started good, then the matches happened, and it wasn't so good, and then the final match happened, and it was really good. So overall, you give it a thumbs up with the Drew McIntyre one. But obviously, with the AEW side of things, his kind of three main feuds were between Kingston,
Mox,
MJF, and Moxley,
yeah.
and Hangman. Obviously, the Hangman one was like pretty short-lived, but was arguably the most notable of all the rivalry. So I don't recount anything that he did after he came back with the Collision stuff, because he had a feud with Ricky Starks, but it didn't really, and Samoa Joe, but they didn't really amount to anything in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, as I say, with Sasha, it's like a case of, or Mercedes, it's more of a case of, yeah, I don't like any really of the talking segments or anything that she's doing outside of her matches. I think that she's had at least 3 to 4 matches that I think have been really good, including the match with Statlander at Full Gear, which I thought was an excellent match. And I think that, yeah, so I would prefer it if she just was spending more time wrestling and less time talking. But they'd kind of try and give her the quote-unquote star treatment. But to be fair, it wasn't the segment that I hate the least on the show, or hate the most on the show.
Which one would that go to?
Let's talk about Adam Cole again. Yeah, Rob would obviously hate me for this stuff again, but like he has to admit that this just sucks. Everything that Adam Cole has done since he's come back is just, since his return, where he like took out MJF at the start. Everything about this story sucks.
Yeah, I'm not digging this either.
Like, the promos are bad, even. Like, he doesn't seem... Like, he's just coming out and just saying the same things over and over again, which is, like, just wants to get his hands on MJF, and then there's somebody that comes out, whether it's Roderick Strong last time, and now it's Kyle O'Reilly this time, says, no, I want to fight MJF. It's like, why are you in competition with each other to fight MJF? Why don't you just say, okay, you want to fight MJF, I want to fight MJF, let's just... And then it's always the story with... It's the same story all the time with Max. It's the jump through hoop storyline when he's a heel, which is like, it's fine every now and again. Like, it was good with the Bryan Danielson storyline leading up to their match, and it was good with the Punk thing leading up to their one, and the Cody getting whipped stuff, but it's just like, it's a crutch for him too much. He leans on that way too much, and especially because he just hasn't been on TV at all. Outside of the pay-per-view match, he's just been a recording on TV for this whole time. It just doesn't feel like this is really like the remnants of what I hated a lot about AEW in 2023, which is the whole Max and Adam Cole thing post All In was just bad stuff and just overly corny and overly melodramatic, and they've just carried it over and like, yeah. So it just feels like, yeah, this is the complete opposite of what I want to see in AEW. This is what I didn't like last year, and I don't like the fact they're bringing it back. I'll tell you now, it's definitely it made a lot but powerful surge for like worst storyline of the year for me for AEW.
I have to start going through my what little lists that I've been creating throughout the year, because I haven't been this year's been too crazy for me to be able to like keep track of a lot of those things. So my end of the year awards are the most bare bones that they've ever been heading into January or heading into December. So I'm forgetting a lot of those things. So we're going to definitely have some discussions, whether it's on air or off air, the three of us, to try to like refresh our memories. Because I started to write up a list of some people of the biggest winners and losers from AEW this year. And I was like, oh my God, I'm forgetting who even would be on that list. Like, you know, some of the biggest winners are pretty obvious. Like, you know, Will Ospreay did some really good stuff this year, and Takeshita and Okada, like some people that won championships and stuff. But then I'm like, all right, outside of Mox and Christian and them, no real standout winners that I can put a lot of attention into. And then on the loser side, I'm like, wow, the losers I just keep forgetting about. And like, yeah, I can mention Aaron Solo doesn't do anything but lose, but there's not really a whole lot to talk about there. I can mention Best Friends fell apart, I'm pretty sure, this year. Was it this year that they did the Chuck and Trent thing?
Yeah, Chucks haven't been able to wrestle that much. This is when Trent turned orange a couple of months ago, but then again, just the unfortunate luck that follows him a lot. It's the case that just as he was getting a push, he gets injured. So
yeah. But hard to keep track of a lot of that stuff. And by the time we get to the end of the year awards, we're going to, I don't know, I got a feeling that we're going to speed through a lot of them this year with like, don't remember as like the answer for some of them. But Adam Cole and MJF, they had a chance to do that around and fix the stuff that was a problem last year. And it's just not working.
Yeah. But, you know, they're going to do the Dynamite Diamond like that dozen battle royal, and so Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly are both going to be in that, and same with MJF as well. So I guess we'll see how it advances then towards the inevitable Cole versus MJF match at World's End, which I won't enjoy probably.
You're assuming that MJF is going to retain the ring, or do you think that they're going to switch it up?
Well, I guess that could be the story that goes into it. If you have Cole win the Dynamite Diamond Ring, then he has something that MJF has to go after.
Yeah, that's where I was leaning, because he could be like, fine, I'll put it on the line if we have a match at World's End or something.
Yeah, so that could be a good way to finally, like, there's no way that now I'm the one that's chasing it rather than Adam Cole, so that'd be a good way to at least get the match settled for World's End. So
they also had an announcement that Mariah May is going to go up against Mina Shirakawa for Winter is Coming, which was about as bare bones as it could get. Mina Shirakawa being like, I knew she was going to turn on me, and she did, so now I want to fight her. And they'll do the match. It's on TV. You know, Mariah May's not been in that great of a position, and I didn't get your opinion on this. How did you feel about the champagne celebration thing on the pay-per-view? Because I hated that segment. I thought that was such a waste.
I thought it was like corny in certain aspects of it. I think that they leaned way too much into the melodrama as well, as they tend to do. So I thought that the segment overall was effective. I think that like Mina being smart enough to realize the attack was coming. I really like the kicking the glass and like that shattering. I thought that was a cool visual. I didn't think that they needed to like be staring at each other for 10 seconds after that before she jumped her and tossed her through the tables on the outside. So I think that, as I think you could have done with some tightening up, and I think there were better ways to go about it, or like they could have just done what they did, but done a bit more like quickly. Because I think there was just a bit too much staring and a bit too much like jawing at each other. But overall, I thought it was a fine enough segment to be on the show.
Now, the last thing to talk about is the Continental Classic matches, which we had several different matches happen on Dynamite. We said before, there are some things happen on Collision. Go ahead and check those spoilers out if you want to find out what happens tomorrow before it airs. Oh, and I think it's 4 p.m. tomorrow is when they're airing that. Shelton Benjamin beat Mark Briscoe. Claudio Castagnoli beat Ricochet. Is that what it was? Yeah. And Brody King and Darby Allin had their whole main event, which, by the way, ended with Brody King basically standing over Darby Allin and protecting him from Claudio to set up like Brody and Claudio having their next match. Matches were good. I'm not too shocked at who won.
Yeah, I mean, a little surprised that like all of them winners were heels. Well, I'd say heels. I guess Brody King isn't technically a heel. He's kind of like
he's
on the tweener side of things with the whole Hasbro. Yeah,
heel in the match, but then right afterward does a babyface thing. So.
Yeah, I thought the matches were. I thought the Ricochet and Claudio match was great. I thought the Benjamin and Mark Briscoe match was pretty good, and the Darby Allin and Brody King match was just what you usually expect from those two, which is like a quick, pretty short match, but they just throw their. Well, Brody King just throws Darby Allin around for a lot of it, and Darby Allin just throws his body towards Brody King and try and defend himself. So, yeah, I think that they almost made sense in terms of who won. I think that. The interesting thing about the Continental Classic this year is that they've changed up the formula a little bit, whereas instead of how they approached it last year, which was essentially the two, it's still the top two advance, but instead of last year's one, where it's the top two group then have another match against each other, and then that determines the winner of the block. Instead, now it's going to be at World's End. It's going to have both the semi-final matches and the final. And it's going to be the winner of the Gold League versus second place in the Blue League, and then the winner of the Blue League versus second place in the Gold League. So that changes it up a little bit. So that makes it a bit more interesting about who could potentially win and then who they would end up facing. So I'm starting to think that the semi-finals are going to have Okada and Fletcher are going to be the two from the Gold League, I'm pretty certain, because they're the two that are most prominently pushed out of it. And then I think it's going to be Ospreay and one other person,
right,
from the Blue League, and that other person is either going to be Claudio or it's going to be Darby. Darby, I think, is maybe a bit more of an outside shot now because he's already lost his first match, and he's also getting super involved in the whole Death Riders situation.
So I was thinking more Ricochet rather than Claudio or Allin. Because I could see this being like the Ricochet, Ospreay, Fletcher, Okada kind of combo. And like maybe, I don't know, the whole like the switching up of like the blue fighting the gold and all that, that's throwing me for a loop as well. Because I was just immediately thinking at first is this is going to be Ospreay against Okada. And then now I have to kind of reformat that. I do still think that Okada's going to win this whole thing at the end though.
I'm solidly on either Ospreay or Fletcher now, and I think that this has actually made it even more likely to me that that's going to be the case, because I could definitely see Okada making it but then losing in the semi-final to Ospreay, and then you have Ospreay versus Fletcher in the final. Or that's the alternative is versus Ospreay as one of the semi-finals, and they go at it again, and Ospreay gets his back, and then he wins the Continental Championship in the final. And then you can do the big Ospreay and Fletcher final match for the Continental Championship at the Australian show, at the Grand Slam show in Australia. So yeah, I think that, as I say, there are multiple different ways they can take it, and I'm interested to see how this tournament progresses and the other stories that come off the back of it as well. So I'd say it was a good start to this one. I'm looking forward to the matches that are taking place on Collision. So I haven't seen any spoilers, but I know it's Okada versus Daniel Garcia, which is an interesting match, and then the Beast Mortos versus Carl Fletcher, and then Ospreay versus I'm trying to remember who's the other guy in the blue league, or gold league, should I say?
Mortos?
No,
Did you mention?
no.
Did you mention? Wait, who's the one that you didn't mention? You got Briscoe, Benjamin, Fletcher, Garcia, Mortos, Okada.
No, that's I'm talking about Ospreay's side.
Oh, the Gold League. All right, so Robinson.
Yeah, the Gold Leagues. Yeah, just Robinson versus Ospreay. So yeah, I've seen Ospreay versus Robinson quite a few times because they had quite a rivalry over the when the United States Championship was still a thing over in New Japan. So yeah, I'm sure that those will be super fun matches. So I'm looking forward to checking those ones out. Yeah, as I say, outside of the Continental Classic matches, the only other thing of note that happened on the show was there was like a beatdown angle between the Death Riders on Jay White, and there was Hangman Page was involved in that as well. So again, they seem to be building towards some kind of. At the moment, it feels to me like they're just going to go with Jay White versus Mox, and then Hangman's going to be somewhere on the outside. But seem to be involved in it as well. But at the moment, they seem to just be heading into like Jay White's definitely going to be involved, and it's whether Hangman and Christian also get involved in it as well. But at least that means we've got the kind of, well, whether it's the main event or not, they might make the Continental Classic final the main event, but we'll see how that goes.
And that's pretty much what we got going on this week. So, we'll figure out what happens with Turning Point and SmackDown later on tonight. We got Survivor Series coming up tomorrow night. So stay tuned for that. We'll do our usual breakdown of, everything that comes around with the pay-per-view side of that. And next week, we're going to get into the follow-up of all of this stuff from the TV content. We're also going to get the go-home show and everything leading up to NXT Deadline. So stay tuned for all those things. And, keep in mind the Darkcast material. At some point, I'm going to post another thing with that. Just got to figure out some other plans with, when to record all those things. Follow everything that you can find on the link tree at amangotree.com. You'll find links to the Smark Moment stuff, the Fanboys Anonymous stuff, and everything else that's happening in that same kind of space. So follow me at Tony Mango. Make sure you follow Callum as well.
Yeah, you can follow me at Wigmaster14 on Twitter and more increasingly Blue Sky. And then you can check out the Power Rankings this Saturday over on smarkamo.com, where I rank the WWE superstars based on their previous week's performances. And then you can also head on over to the Fantasy League, also wfantasyleague.com, where you can see how Survivor Series and all the shows leading up to Survivor Series affected the points and the standings and how people are doing as we head into Survivor Series, and then after Survivor Series, how the results of that will impact who gets to how everyone's rosters are affected and how points are affected moving forward as well. So tune into that to see how the standings look like right now.
Okie dokie, everybody. You know the deal. Hit that like button if you didn't already. Double check your subscribe. Leave those comments below and stay tuned for the Survivor Series stuff coming up tomorrow. But for now, that's going to do its in for the hot tags. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all your support. And adios. This has been another Smark Out moment, and we're being counted out.